Is there more to midlife than just getting through it? Absolutely. Welcome. I'm your host, Debbie Cunningham, jazz artist turned midlife mentor, and I'm here to say to you loud and clear, it's time for your midlife crescendo. Well, hey friends, happy Monday and happy May. Can you believe it's May already? It's 1 week until Mother's Day, and I just wanted to remind you to call your mom if you can. Unfortunately, my experience has taught me that life is short. Don't wait to tell your mom you appreciate her, or anyone else for that matter. Most moms I know just want to know that you haven't forgotten them in your life. So call your mom, friends. Okay, so this past weekend, I volunteered at a women's theology conference called Kerygma. It is hosted by Lisa Harper and her Back Porch Theology podcast. I learned a lot and saw so many amazing midlife women excited to study the Bible. It was such a moving experience watching 1,000 women worshiping God together too. Most of them came with a friend or three, which made it a fun girlfriend weekend for them. And I so enjoyed getting to welcome them to Franklin. When I was going to start Midlife Crescendo, I actually sent out a survey to midlife women, and many of them mentioned that they were struggling to build friendships in midlife. Deeper friendships are so important for all of us, especially in midlife. And speaking of friends, I have my dear friend Marcia Ramirez as our guest today. In fact, we are talking about nurturing the 3 most important relationships in a woman's life with God, our girlfriends, and ourselves. So here's my conversation with Marcia. Well, hey everyone. Today I have with me Marcia Ramirez. She is a singer-songwriter, accomplished musician, author, and podcast host from Nashville, Tennessee. She has traveled the world performing with so many country artists, including Patty Loveless, Rodney Crowell, Tanya Tucker, and Pam Tillis, and most recently, pop legend Christopher Cross. She has had songs cut by Reba McEntire, Jody Messina, The Whites, Scott McIntyre, and many other independent artists. Her voice can be heard on albums of Christopher Cross, Garth Brooks, and many more. In 2018, Marcia felt called by God to start a new kind of women's ministry that encourages diversity and serves women of all faiths and beliefs. Marcia started God and My Girlfriend's Ministries based on the song title that she co-wrote with her girlfriends, Lisa Hendrick and Patricia Conroy, and was recorded by Reba McEntire on her Grammy and Dove award-winning CD, Sing It Now, Songs of Faith and Hope. As founder and president of God and My Girlfriend's Ministries, Marcia oversees content, leads the online community, serves as host for the quarterly girlfriend gatherings in Nashville, and performs and speaks at women's events across the country. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you, Debbie. That's so sweet of you. I've been really looking forward to this conversation this week because I just love when we get to meet for coffee and just talk. So I just knew that this would be one of those great conversations. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you, and I enjoy your friendship as well. Well, the first question I always ask my guests, or first directive, it's really not a question, but
hmm
tell us something about yourself that is not on your bio.
Not on my bio. Well, the thing I'm kind of obsessed about right now is my 2 grandkids.
I can relate.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter named Charlotte, and my grandson Oliver just turned 2. We just had a big birthday party for him this weekend. And oh my goodness, their ages, and I know you have,
Yep.
similar age grandchild.
Yes.
Do you have 2?
Both
1 or
grandsons. Yep. 4 and 2, the same ages.
they're exhausting.
Yes, they are.
So I guess what's not on my bio right now is that I'm tired all the time.
I tell you, that is why I always tell my friends, oh boy, after I spend a day or two with the grandkids,
Mhm.
it's like Wow, this is why God gave us children when we're young, and I have some beef with him about that, like, where's the energy so we can pour into these kids because 'cause they're wiping me out.
I know, but aren't they like the
Oh,
best?
yes.
Oh,
It's such a
yeah.
joy.
Yeah, I'm just I was getting to spend a lot of time with them lately, so that's been my big thing, and I'm looking forward to summer, spending time with them too, so.
Now, I don't get as much time with mine. They were in Germany for 3 years, and now they just moved back, and they're about 4 hours away
Oh,
from us,
well,
which is
closer.
good, but at
Yeah.
least I get yes, at least they're closer and I get a little bit more time with them instead of once a year.
I'm super lucky 'cause my grandkids are, it's my oldest son and his wife, and they actually live right here in our neighborhood.
Oh, nice.
So I we're all have busy lives, so
Yes.
sometimes I'll go a week or 2 and not get to see them just because we're all so busy, but every now and then I'll just email, text Emily and say, "Hey, can I see them today? I need to see them." If I haven't seen them in a few days, I start really missing them. So,
Yeah. Well, we FaceTime ours. We just got used to
oh,
that in Germany, and
yeah.
so our grandson will say, "Can I see Gigi and Granddad?" And so she just
Oh.
FaceTimes us. It's nice.
Oh, so you're Gigi.
I'm Gigi, yeah.
That's your grandma name. Okay.
What are
I'm just
you?
I'm just grandma.
I
I'm
know.
just
I asked my daughter, but my mom is grandma, and she's like, "I want you to have a young, fun name." I'm like, "Okay." And she also didn't wanna take anything away from my mom being grandma,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
she because that to her was that's her grandma, and so I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay." At first, I wasn't sure, but now I love it.
Yeah.
When those little cheeks pucker up and go, "Gigi," I melt.
Well, I tell you what, my no, Oliver, he calls me Bobo, and, he tries to say grandma, but it comes out Bobo, and I was just saying the other day, I am so glad Oliver was not the first one, or I would be Bobo.
I know, right? That's so true.
Because they say your first grandchild names you. So
Yes.
thank goodness Charlotte could say grandma and not Bobo.
That's too funny. That might be his name for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
Well, today we're talking about your book, God, My Girlfriends, and Me, Nurturing the Three Most Important Relationships in a Woman's Life.
Mhm,
So tell me, friend, what
mhm.
inspired you to write this book and in midlife?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know, I lost my mind for a minute. You know, I when when I started God and My Girlfriend's Ministries back in 2018, and I had this desire to start this community, for women of faith that we could all get together, and I wanted it to be really inclusive. I didn't want it to be just a specific Baptist group or a Methodist group or I wanted it to be a place where women, a diversified group of women could come together and learn from one another and, and,
Right.
and bond together. And so I started this ministry, and then I started doing some speaking at some retreats. And I really wrote the book because I wanted to have something like if someone came to the retreat and they liked what I was talking about and they wanted to take a deeper dive into things, then it would sort of be just sort of like a handbook along with my message. As I started writing it and I started like sending it out, people were like, "It's too clinical. You've got to just you can't just give information. You need to share part of your life." So then I sort of rewrote it and ended up including my journey, my a lot of stories with my self-care and how I had to learn how to prioritize taking care of myself, and my own journey with friendships and struggles with connecting with other women, and then my own faith journey. And people might read it and it's not exactly their story, but I bet they can find a few things in there that they can relate to because really we all are more alike than we're different. We really are.
Absolutely. In the scripture, it says to love your neighbor as yourself, but often we actually don't know how to love ourselves.
Mhm.
So this needs some attention. I love the quote you have in the book from Lisa Turkhurst. We must not confuse the command to love with the disease to please.
Mhm.
I think this is a huge area of struggle for most women in loving themselves and learning how to love themselves. I personally am a recovering people pleaser,
Mhm.
and in the past, I've nurtured everyone but myself.
Yes.
But then I hit a wall. So you talk about learning the power of no. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, because we only have 24 hours in a day. And the Lord, it says in the Bible, there's a reason why we don't know, it's like we have a
Yeah.
limited amount of time, and we have a limited amount of energy. We have a limited amount of brain space. We are limited beings, right? So we cannot say
Mhm.
yes to everything that we want to say yes to, or we will be exhausted and we will be spent. We do need to start saying yes to ourselves now and then, because we put ourselves way down on the list of priorities, is what I see with a lot of women. And yes, we should, if we're married, our husband should be a priority. Yes, God should be a priority. But what I'm finding is that those messages are clear, right? So
Yes,
so we
yes,
know to make those a priority. What we struggle in our children, it's like there are messages everywhere that tells us where to put those as a priority. But actually taking time to nurture ourselves, nurture our girlfriends, because women need friendships. They just do. We can
yes.
get into that in a little bit more, but women need those friendships. And and then nurturing our souls, which is our connection with our creator. Though I truly believe that if those three areas are nurtured well in our lives, that we're just going to be better wives, we're going to be better mothers, we're going to be better friends. Everything is going to be, we're
Right.
just going to be better. But part of that has to start with knowing how to say no to certain things. And going back to Lisa Turkhurst, she wrote this book that we did a women's study at my house on. It's called The Best Yes. And she talks about that. Sometimes there's so many great things, and you've got two. It's
Mhm.
easy if there's like one bad
Yeah.
thing and one good thing. But if there's two good things and you're like, oh, how do I say yes to that? I mean, how to say yes to both? Sometimes you just have to, sit down and say, this isn't, for me. And what I also realize is that when I say yes to things that is really not making sense for me in my life at that time, I am preventing someone else from getting to say yes to that opportunity.
Yes.
So, when we are, and so we're stressing ourselves out, we're stressing out all of our capabilities, and we're also blocking someone else from having a blessing of being able to say yes there. So once I got that in my head, it made it so much easier to say no. And then just say, look, I would love to do this. My heart is saying I would love to do this, but the reality of my schedule means it has to be a no right now. But can I help you find somebody else? There's always, I can't do that,
Right.
but I could do this. And so you have to, evaluate your season of life, where your priorities are at that time, and those shift all the time. And so that's how you manage those no's.
I think that's important. I think there's a lie that we believe that women have to, especially Christian women or godly women, have to always say yes to everything,
Right.
right? That we have to do all the things or we're a bad person.
Oh, that's
I mean,
rude. Rude to say no.
I know, right? There is a there yeah, there are schools of thought that say, "Oh, it's rude to say no." But really, I know I have struggled with this in the years, like especially when I was a mom with young kids and involved in church ministry and doing all the things but I would say yes to everybody else except myself.
Yeah.
And then I hit a wall. And I know a lot of women do that. And
Mhm.
stories from our past often cause us to think that self-care is selfish or
Mhm.
overindulgent.
Mhm.
Your quote from Kate Reed, the speaker and mental health advocate, she talks about self-care being this: self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you.
Isn't that a great quote? I loved that quote. Yeah.
A great quote. Well, truly, self-care is figuring out what you need so that you can give the world the best of you. So what are some of the ways that you found to do that?
Well, um, I tell a story in my book about how I'm as a touring musician, sometimes I come in and I'm just exhausted. And so I started telling my family that I need a pajama day now and then. I just need a day to myself. And my husband and my son, first of all, they started like, they knew pajama day, don't mess with mama. Like that's
Oh,
her
yeah.
day. And I would try to schedule one day a month as a pajama day, and I would And I don't do it every month now. Now that we're talking about it, I was like, I need to instigate pajama days again. But when I was super, super busy, it really helped me just to see, even when I felt overwhelmed and tired, if I could see that on my schedule, okay, next Tuesday is pajama day. I just got to push forward. And then I know I get a day that I can regroup, a day for myself, a day to fill myself back up. Seeing that on my schedule was just so relieving to me, you know? And it was funny because I don't know, after I'd been doing it a while, one day I came home and I asked my son, my teenage son, I said, "What are you doing today?" And he goes, I need a pajama day."
I love that actually.
I
I
know.
love it.
Right? I was like, "Okay." So whether you are actually in your pajamas all day or whether or not you just take a day for yourself, like, literally schedule 1 day a month. Women, ladies, listen to me, 1 day a
One
month, you
day a
can do
month.
this. And I take it seriously. I go to the grocery store, I make sure there's food for everybody, I make sure all my errands are run, I make sure, leading up to pajama day, I make sure that there's nothing that's gonna throw me off schedule because they really do, for me, that's what gives me that moment of just, if I wanna just read all day, if I wanna study my Bible all day, if I wanna sleep all day, whatever it is that I am needing that day is what I allow myself to do that day.
I love that. I think that's so, so important
Mhm,
because I think our needs change too. Sometimes we do need a day to be in the Word or a day to just read
mhm,
or a day to do nothing.
mhm, or do nothing.
Sometimes I used to feel guilty about like I just need to sit and I just want to watch movies today
Mhm,
or and just veg out. I'm tired of reading. My brain is overloaded and just sit outside with tea or coffee and just look at the blue sky and the green grass.
mhm,
I mean, those or take a walk by myself and just take in what I'm seeing and be present.
mhm.
So, I love that you do that. I love that pajama day. I think it's
Well,
awesome.
and I do wanna say this really quick too about that. That sounds very, I realize what a blessing that is
Yeah.
to be able to take that. There are maybe some single moms out there that are working every day. They're like, "Oh, well, I would love to schedule a pajama day." And trust me, I had seasons as a single mom
Yes.
myself. There were times where that just doesn't sound like something they could do, but, um what you can do is maybe you take a morning or an afternoon and you work that out with girlfriends. There's where your friendships coming in. Like, man, I need an afternoon to myself. And maybe if you have young kids, maybe you get with a couple of other moms and you swap out. So each one of you has a Saturday afternoon just to relax and have time to yourself and you watch each other's kids. You have to get creative with this, but I'm saying
Yes.
it's worth it. It's worth the extra effort. I believe that.
Yes, and you know what? I was raised by a single mom, I mean, for a certain amount of time, and then I also my husband traveled all the time when my kids were little, like, every other week. So about
Mhm.
6 months a year, I was by myself.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine, we both had kids at the same time.
Mhm.
She and I swapped. Once a week, I would watch her kids for a few hours, and we did it in the morning because, this we were both stay-at-home moms, but we did it in the morning so that then we could get our kids back, feed them lunch, and then put them down for a nap.
Mm.
So, I mean and it worked for us because if we needed to go out and do things by ourselves, we could do that in the morning.
Mhm.
And in the afternoon, we still had time to recoup and whatever we needed to do.
Right.
So it worked great for us, and it's a huge blessing if you can do that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, let's talk a little bit about friendship because that's the biggest thing in your book. I mean, not the biggest thing. You talk about all those relationships, but that was a big driving force in God and My Girlfriends,
Yes.
right? And that was a big driving force too as you started your group, your ministry, God and My Girlfriends Ministries, to
Mhm.
gather women to start cultivating these friendships. I'm going to tell a little story about how our friendship began so the listeners know. Okay, so our friendship began because one of my friends invited me to go see the movie 20 Feet from Stardom. You remember
Yeah,
that?
I do remember that. Yeah.
So she invited me to go and she said, "Oh, a group of women in the music business were going together." And that was the only detail I had. Afterward, we all went to dinner and I ended up sitting beside you. and we struck up a conversation, and our friendship grew over time.
Mhm.
And so it was just little bits. We weren't fast friends, but we made a connection
Yes.
and we cultivated that over the years. But it was great. First of all, it was great to be out with a group of like-minded women and talk about music and life and the movie. It was a great night.
Mhm.
But I almost didn't go. And this is why. Out of fear. I feared that I would be embarrassed about what I hadn't accomplished in my life at that point. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing. I had already compared myself to the women in the room, even though I didn't know them, assuming that I wouldn't belong. Obviously, I decided to go, but you and I have talked about it in the past, the difficulty in women's friendships because of the comparison trap.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Well,
And you didn't know that about my story.
I
I
did
never
not
told you that.
know, but I'm so glad that you chose not to let fear stop you because we met that night and we've been friends.
Yes.
And that's a big thing. Just a side note, myself, I've been trying really, really hard not to make decisions out of fear. Like if my decision is based in fear, I've got to just get over it. But we all do that. We all do
Yes.
that. And the comparison thing, our culture pits women against each other. It just
Yes.
does. And the messaging in magazines, the messaging in social media, they encourage us to look at each other as gauges to compare how we're doing. Like,
Right.
am I dressed as cute as she is? Are my kids, you know, in the same things that other people's are? Are my kids' birthday parties as nice as someone else's? Is my house decorated as cute as hers?
Yes.
We are constantly comparing. And when you are comparing yourself to somebody else, it creates a wall and you cannot become truly vulnerable and intimate in a true friendship way with them. So we have to start tearing down those walls, and it starts with not comparing, because comparing does one of two things. It's either going to make you feel less than somebody or better than somebody, and both
Right.
and both are bad, right?
Right. Right.
So I think the only way, to really avoid comparing yourself is back to self-care, is about to taking care of yourself and feeling good about yourself and who you are and what you have to offer, and to also know that what you have to offer is totally different from other people. We're all uniquely made by God to have our own light in the world.
Mhm.
And just because someone else has a light doesn't mean that your light isn't just as strong, right? And just because someone else is doing something cool doesn't mean that you can't do something cool too. We can't fall into the scarcity mindset of like, if they have this, that means it's going to take away from me. It's just not how life works. Like, we
Right.
can all offer wonderful things to this world by getting in touch with the gifts that God gave us and using those gifts. And then when you're focusing on that, it's hard to like stay focused on comparison. At least that's what
Right.
I've found to be true.
Yeah, and I notice, and the more I walk with women in professional spheres,
Mhm.
I see that when the tide rises, all boats rise.
That's
And
right.
as we work together and shine the light on one another, to shine the light on someone else's gifts, it makes the world a more beautiful place. And that we
Yes.
can stop comparing ourselves. Like, social media is tough because we're getting highlight reels from everybody.
Right.
I do not show you a picture of my messy room, right?
Mhm. That's right.
Unless I'm an organizer and I want to show you, this is what I did to make this organized. But
Right.
I mean, as a creative, I'm always struggling with that. But that's not what I'm going to put on Instagram, right?
Right.
Or most people aren't going to talk about the fight they had with their teenager when they walked out the door or on the way to church. Let's just talk
Mhm.
about that.
Mhm.
But I think that it's really easy to compare our everyday life with someone else's highlight reel,
Yes.
even in midlife,
Yeah.
even in midlife.
Yeah, for sure. And even just for social media, if you're following, like, this is going to sound funny, but for a while there, I was following Joanna Gaines, which I love Joanna
Yeah.
Gaines. But every time one of her things would pop on of this beautifully decorated room or this amazing meal she made or whatever, I felt like a loser, big L. And I said, you know what? It's not good for me to follow her right now because it makes me feel bad about myself. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I can never decorate as good as she did, or I'm never going to be this or never going to be that. So I think if you find yourself following, whether it's people you know or people that you don't know or whatever on social media, if it makes you feel bad about yourself, take a break. It's like you need to take your own temperature about what you're where you are, because we all go up and down with that sort of thing. We all have different thresholds for what we can handle. But if something is constantly making you feel bad about yourself, that you're not, living up to par, pull that out of your life right now. Just pull it out. I'm telling you. And just concentrate on what's in front of you and do things you love. Make your house what you love. Don't worry about making it look like Joanna Gaines, just
Yeah.
surround yourself with stuff that you love. Make it you. Be who you are, who God made you to be. And don't try to just copy and compare all the time. And believe me, I have fallen in that trap. And
Mhm.
it's not a good place to be.
Mm-mm. And I heard this woman talk about it once. I think she was an artist, and she said she would see women walk in the room, and she would be like, "They are so much further along than I am."
Mhm.
And it made her feel small. And she said, and then I flipped the script on that and thought, how about instead of viewing myself as so small, I start going, well, I aspire to be that. So let me use their example as an encouragement to help me get there.
Yeah.
Looking at them as an encouragement to keep pursuing what
Mhm.
I'm doing
Mhm.
instead of feeling so small in comparison.
Yes. It's so easy for us. We focus on the people that are farther along than us. We focus on the people that have more than us. There are people behind us that are focusing on us in the same way, and you don't even see it. And sometimes, if you just stop a minute and reach behind you and spend some time pulling up someone else along with you, like the reach behind, like, oh, focus on some people that maybe you can help to get where you are. You know what I mean?
Right.
We've all got these journeys, especially once we get into this place in our lives. And that's one thing I have loved. I spent so many years focusing on my career and trying to be successful and chasing this dream. And now I just love being at a place to where I can sort of look behind me and go, hey, I see someone back there struggling with what I used to struggle with. And let me reach out a hand and help you along there. I mean, that's what life is about. It's about helping each other. I have this quote on my Facebook page for Ram Dass that just says, we're all just walking each other home. And I believe
It's
that.
true.
Like, just hold hands and let's do it together.
I hope you enjoyed part one of our conversation with Marcia about her book, God, My Girlfriends, and Me. We talked today about nurturing self-care and nurturing your relationships with your friends. I'll put all her links in the show notes, including the interview I did on her podcast called God and My Girlfriends about starting Midlife Crescendo podcast. It was a blast talking to Marcia and her co-host Stacy. Next week on the podcast, we will have part 2 of my chat with Marcia. We had to break it into 2 parts because we talked for an entire hour when I interviewed her. We will continue talking about cultivating friendships midlife and the things that actually kill friendship. Also working through conflicts as friends and soul care ideas for nourishing your relationship with God. Just a reminder, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover on Midlife Crescendo, please submit that to me on midlifecrescendo.com or send an email to info@debbiecunningham.net and I'll see what we can do. Thanks for tuning in today, and remember, midlife is just a brand new season to find your passion and purpose for your grand finale. Talk next week.